Hello, you're watching Bike Routes of Brum, a channel dedicated to finding safe cycle routes across Birmingham. This is going to be one of the first of a series of videos looking to find safe cycle routes to various sporting and events venues across the region, and in this video we'll be looking at how to get from Chamberlain Square in the city centre to Edgbaston Cricket Ground. Car parking at Edgbaston is actually relatively sparse, and so cycling is probably one of the best ways to get to the stadium. The route should take about 13 minutes, which is much faster than you could get there by bus and walking, and can be done on relatively quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. I've put a link to the route into the description so you can download the GPX file and follow it for yourself. Cycle parking at Edgbaston is actually pretty good, with quite a lot of stands on the outside of the stadium as well as over at the road at Aldi. If you're not taking your own bike, you can easily rent bikes from West Midlands Cycle Hire, and here's a picture showing the locations that you can end your rental around the stadium. I've put a link in the description to the West Midlands Cycle Hire website that will show you how to rent a bike. So we start off in Chamberlain Square and we go down the hill through Victoria Square and past the Town Hall, built in 1834, and it's one of the main concert halls in the city. Now we roll over the tram tracks and round this little bench here onto Hill Street. Aptly named because it's on a massive hill. It's quite fun to go down, not so fun to cycle up. It's one way, so you're going with the traffic here, and there's a bike lane going back up the hill. And when the lights change, we roll over and continue onto Hill Street. We're just round the back of New Street Station at the moment. You can see what used to be the old John Lewis, which is now vacant. And as we continue around, dodge the pedestrians that seem to walk out into the road all the time, and we carry on down the hill. Now, there's a nice little bit for cyclists here to just nip over, just watch out for oncoming traffic. It's quite often stopped by the pedestrian crossing there, which also stops the cyclists, which many people miss. We carry on down to the junction here with Smallbrook Queensway, and you can see the legendary nightclub Snobs, but we carry on over and we're onto Hurst Street. And this will take us down into Chinatown and a big open square outside the Hippodrome. It can be quite busy with pedestrians here, so just kind of take your time and don't rush through. And we nip through here back onto Hurst Street. You've got the Arcadian to your left and various restaurants and stuff to your right, which are quite nice to pop into. And we head down here over the junction and down this nice little cycle route here, as it's one way up for vehicles, but both ways for cyclists. So we turn right onto Kent Street, and now we're starting to get onto kind of the proper A38 cycle route as we just cross over here. Now this really is where, to be frank, Birmingham City Council have had their pants pulled down a little bit by Winvic, who seem to be doing the construction there. We have to take a diverted left onto Goot Street North, and then that means we have to then go round onto Rentham Street here. I'm not sure why they haven't just redirected the traffic to come this way instead of forcing bikes to go down there, because they've allowed traffic to carry on through, and it doesn't make any sense at all, to be perfectly honest, and it's just a massive hassle for anybody who wants to use this cycle lane. We've rejoined the cycle lane now and we follow it round. Just be careful around this bit because there's quite often broken glass dotted around, which I've had a puncture or two around there before. We carry on down Bristol Street, and it's quite satisfying sometimes, especially when it's really backed up and you just fly down here past all the cars. I think it was one of the big cycle campaigners on Twitter, a guy called Tom Flood, filmed himself going down here last year and put the caption, "Bicycles deliver the freedom that auto ads promise." I quite often think of that as I'm cruising past all the cars. Now we come to this big junction. It can take a little while to get across here. Cyclists do have their own lights, but quite often people will kind of skirt their way through. Just be safe as you go across it and be mindful of cars coming across. And then we carry on over back onto Bristol Road now, not Bristol Street, and we carry on up this little hill. Just look to your right as you go over this. Just make sure there's not any cars turning in, because sometimes they can be going quite fast up this bit, even though it's a 30. Come to a stop here. You usually push a button and you can it'll stop the traffic and you can go across. And we switch over to the other side of the road and continue down this way for quite a while now. So the A38 cycle lane is really one of the two main flagship routes in the city. You've got the A38 one that we're on, which stretches from Selly Oak and the university all the way up to the city centre, and you've got the A34 which goes from the city centre all the way up to Perry Bar, which is where the Alexander Stadium is and where the Commonwealth Games were held. It really is, to be fair, it is pretty good overall. One thing to note from an accessibility issue is that it's on a slight tilt, which is fine when you're on a bike, but if you're using something like a trike, it can put you a little bit off camber, which is something to be aware of as you're cycling along. But overall, it's a really good piece of infrastructure, to be fair, and it makes it really easy to get from Selly Oak to the city centre. Just be careful with Sir Harry's Road back there. Quite often cars will come out of there, and because they can only turn left, they'll be looking right and not left, so they won't necessarily be looking out for cyclists, which can be a bit of an issue. But we're coming now to a junction with Priory Road. If you want to go to Selly Oak, you carry on straight over the lights, but we're going to turn and go across this crossing here. It can take a little bit of time to get across here because the two lights aren't synced up, but once we get over, we're onto a cycle lane along Priory Road now, and we follow this down and you should just about see Edgbaston Cricket Ground in the distance there. We'll go down over to this junction with Pershaw Road, and again it's a push button for cyclists to get across. It's fairly new, all this, and it is quite an easy way to get across. Just be careful when it's a match day like it was on the day that I filmed this. Just be aware of pedestrians walking around in the cycle lane. But once you get to here, you have arrived at Warwickshire County Cricket Ground, aka Edgbaston. So, like I said at the beginning, the bike racks are located along the front of the stadium. So if you hop at the curb here and walk over towards the stadium, you'll see a few racks just lined up by the entrance. If there isn't any room there, the Aldi just over this crossing also has a few more spaces. And if you're really desperate, over at Cannon Hill Park as well, there's quite a few down by the Mac. If you've hired a bike, use this crossing to get over the road, and there should be a few lined up along the pavement between here and the end of Cannon Hill Park, and the cycle route just kind of carries on that way. So all there's left to say really is thanks for watching, and I hope that this has been useful for you. I try to upload these routes as often as I can, so feel free to subscribe to the channel so you can see when new videos are released. Thanks.